afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of West Yorkshire Combined Authority Transport Committee. My name is Susan Hinchcliffe. I'm leader of Bradford, but also have the honour of being chair of this committee in West Yorkshire. So we'll just go around the table, say who we are, where we come from. I'll go to the politicians first. On my right, I have...
Eric Firth, Kirklees, and I also have a great honour of being Deputy Chair of this Transport Committee.
Councillor Peter Carlisle leads. I'm the other Deputy Chair of the Transport Committee.
Councillor Liz Rowe from Bradford.
Scott Patient, Calderdale, Cabinet Lead for Climate Action, Active Travel and Housing.
Colin Hutchinson, also from Calderdale.
Councillor Axel Shaw, Portfolio Holder for Regeneration Planning and Transport on Bradford Council.
Matthew Morley, Cabinet Member, Planning, Transportation and Highways, Wakefield Council.
Moses Crook, Cabinet Member for Highways, Transport and Housing, Kirklees Council.
Caroline Firth, Councillor in Bradford.
Councillor Abdul Hanan from Leeds.
Councillor Andrew Lloyd, Bradford Council. Councillor Pete Kilbane, Executive Member for Transport, City of York Council.
Councillor Aman Khan, Wakefield Council.
Councillor Jacob Williamson, the Transport Engagement Lead from Wakefield Council.
Councillor Annie Maloney, Transport Engagement Lead at Leeds City Council.
Councillor Oliver Edwards, Leeds City Council.
Councillor Matthew McLaughlin, Transport Engagement Lead, Kirklees.
Mick Bunting, Interim Director of Transport Operations and Passenger Experience.
Hello, Helen Ellerton, Head of Transport Policy.
Hi, Dave Haskins, Interim Director, Passenger Experience and Assets Combined Authority.
Simon Warburton, Executive Director for Transport.
We have a new committee secretariat person starting today with us. Welcome, Adam. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you. As I said, my name is Adam Hunt, Committee Services. Nice to meet you all.
So, right. Sorry, do you not?
I'm Sarah Naylor from Committee Services Officer.
Thank you. Apologies, Sarah. So, apologies for absence.
Apologies for absence have been received from Councillors Neil Buckley, Mohsin Hussain, Helen Hayden and Peter Caffrey.
Lovely, thank you very much. Any declarations or disclosable pecuniary interests coming on the agenda? No, none declared. Thank you very much. Exempt information and possible exclusion of press and public. We don't have any of that today, do we? No. Minutes of the meeting of Transport Committee held on 29th of January. Those have been circulated. Has anybody got any comments or matters rising from those? Yes, Councillor Williamson.
It's just a question of my apologies because I did email them in but not on the minutes. So,
Can we make sure those are added to the... Councillor Williamson's apologies are added to the minutes of the last meeting?
Yes,
they're not noted. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Hannan?
I also emailed my apologies for the last meeting. It's not been noted.
And Councillor Hannan. Councillor Edwards?
Thank you, Chair. Just a note on page 4, the Chair emphasised the importance of improving trade union relations and requested a response. To the best of my knowledge, a response has not been received. Could we chase that up, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Khan?
Chair, it says here I was present at the last meeting, but I give my apologies.
So we have a little bit of confusion about who was here and who wasn't here at the last meeting. We need to sort that for next time. But I'm sure Adam will be on the case. Now he's arrived, you'll get us in good order and we'll be fine. So thank you very much, colleagues, for patience in that arena. Anything else? No? So with those amendments then, are we happy to approve those as a correct record? Can I see all those in favour, please show? That is carried. Thank you very much. So we've got two main items on the agenda and the project approval. So starting at the bus service improvement plan update. Obviously we've discussed this at some length before and sort of configured our priorities around it. We need to do this again, don't we? Because there's some more money coming in and government wants us to do this again. So we're doing it again. Helen, do you want to present this item?
Thank you. So, as Councillor Hinchcliffe says, we are around to the point again of needing to update the bus service improvement plan. So, what the purpose of this report is to do is to set out the Transport Committee how we intend to do that and what our approach is. So essentially this is summarising the fact that early in January we received guidance from DFT around updating BSIPs for submission by the 12th of June this year. So this is essentially set out in a way, so for us to kind of obtain the next round of BSIP funding, we need to update our bus service improvement plan, have that go through the process and then receive the funding alongside our enhanced partnership, which is also currently being updated to allow us to deliver alongside the operators. So the paper sets out our proposed approach to do our revised bus service improvement plan, which is building on essentially a set of existing sort of 5 key areas. The first one is around continuing to develop and enhance the bus network. Second one is to build on the principles, kind of a clear and simple fare structure. The third one is around continuing to develop the tools that enable us to do kind of inclusive customer support. Fourthly, around developing our pipeline and identifying funding for bus priority to enhance the infrastructure we're delivering through existing capital programmes across West Yorkshire. And then lastly, around continuing to green our bus fleet, so increasing the number of zero emission buses that are operating across West Yorkshire as and when we can do so. So what we're really trying to say in here is our new bus service improvement plan will build upon kind of our customer-centric approach that we've been taking to date, and within that, enabling us an opportunity to celebrate our successes, and some of those particularly around the Mayor's Fairs were set out in our last Transport Committee, but also building on lessons learned about where we can improve things further and deliver better overall for the customer. So that's the first part of the paper, and the recommendation in the paper is to endorse that approach, which I'll come back to in a moment. Also set out in this paper is around the passenger charter. So one of the key requirements for the bus service improvement plan is to have a passenger charter in place. We already did through Bus 18 and the work we were doing on the Alliance, but this gave us an opportunity to really affirm that position. So the paper is just setting out where we're up to on that passenger charter and how we're developing it. So it's being done through a collaborative approach with operators about how we and the operators can get an agreed position on consistency of offer of a number of things that impact on the customer across the network. So this was informed by the Mayor's Big Bus Chat and kind of set out in a number of KPIs in there. And I don't know whether Mick, you want to just add to that around the customer satisfaction?
Sure, thank you, Helen, for that. Yeah, just to update on where we're at with the passenger chart. It was launched almost a year to the day ago, 10th of March. We're linking into the public perception of transport survey, and that fieldwork has just been completed, and that will inform some of our KPIs to measure the performance of those set out in the charter. And the updated charter will be forthcoming in May this year, with a report to set out the performance of the current charter and how it's performed against those KPIs. So that work is in progress and being done as the public perceptions of transport survey report, the data of which has been analysed and will be published in May as well. So it's all linked in. So by May we should have a substantive update on the republished charter for 2024 and what the first charter, the first year of the charter has told us and what we're going to do, and informing our critical actions going forward.
Thank you. So just in terms of the recommendations on the paper, we're asking Transport Committee to endorse our approach to developing the next bus service improvement plan, and agreeing to the fact that we will bring kind of an update back to the Transport Committee at the end of May.
Okay, lovely, thank you very much. And I think we'll have some, want to see the passenger charter again, I think at some point as well, but we can discuss that during this item. So, questions, comments, can I see those indicating, please, to ask questions, make comments on this paper? Councillor Edwards, Councillor Hutchinson, first of all, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'd like to thank officers for your work on this, and to acknowledge that. I think there are a lot of good points in here. I think it would be helpful to add some specific points, so especially on a day when bus Users UK have released a report highlighting that West Yorkshire has the lowest passenger satisfaction numbers in the country at 73%. And I think if you were to interview many bus users in outer wards, especially like mine, I think it would probably be lower than that, if truth be told. So I think in terms of the process, in terms of how complaints are handled, I would like to see more transparency around complaint numbers. At the moment, if somebody complains to Arriva first or to Transdev, it goes into this kind of black hole almost. People complain, it's sent to a national centre. The responses, when I've contacted both as a private citizen and also as a councillor, have been inadequate in both cases. I know this is the case for many of my residents who've also contacted them. So if they're dealing with complaints nationally, how do we as elected representatives know what's going on? How do we get that picture? The bus companies have not been transparent about sharing that information. So that's the first point I'd make. The other point as well, I think there needs to be something more specific around compensation. So they talk about free vouchers. Well, free travel vouchers are not much use for people who have bus passes, for example, older residents or residents who have bus passes for other reasons. So the offer of free vouchers is not very useful. I would like to see something more specific. So for example, if it's an outer area, especially, or if it's an area with limited connections, if a bus does not show up and passengers need to make alternative arrangements, for example, if they need to take a taxi, I think the bus company should pay for that. And again, relating to experience both from myself and also from residents, when you ask for that, the bus companies refuse to do that. And I don't think that's good enough. They have a responsibility to provide that service. And if they're not providing the service, I and many of my residents think they should pay for it. And I think we do need something more specific around that, and I would really like that to be pushed. So thank you for your work, and can you push forward some of these ideas, please? Thank you.
Sure, thank you, Councillor Edwards, for those comments. Just with regards to the first one on customer satisfaction, customer complaints, I was quite heavily involved in the development of the first charter, not so much these days, but this was a key challenge in terms of how we centralise and localise complaints, feedback, and responses to those. And it was a key focus that we managed to achieve that. And in the timeline of producing the charter for last year, that was something that we knew was an area of development for the second report, the second charter in 2024. Absolutely understanding the need to be customer focused, and that the approach to handling complaints needs to be local and where possible centralised, and that's a key focus of ours going forward. And I've asked one of the team who's assessing the results and the performance measures of the first charter to look into that area specifically as a priority. I know it's really a hot topic for passengers who find the complaints procedure confusing at times. And want to have that centralised approach, and that is something that we're committed to looking at, and will be part of that review that will be put forward later on in the spring. With regards to the point you make about the vouchers, absolutely a valid point, and that there should be some kind of scheme available to passengers who have been let down in the way that you describe. I'm aware from being chair of the West Yorkshire Bus Lines that this scheme is available with most operators, but clearly from your feedback, passengers are not experiencing this. So I think if I could maybe offline get some of those experiences from you, councillor, I can take that back into the alliance and have those conversations with the operators to ensure that those procedures that are in place are properly adhered to, and that passengers are being recompensed, if that's the right word, in situations as you've described. So thank you.
Share my emails.
Thank you, Councillor Hutchins.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, one of the things we're wanting to achieve is an accessible, inclusive service for all members of the community. Regarding that, I'm slightly alarmed to see the reference to the KPI of the percentage of bus stops with up-to-date printed timetable or QR code, because that militates against those people who don't have smartphones with QR readers, and not everybody does. And so, if that drives the system to actually preferentially use QR codes rather than printed timetables, I think that would disadvantage a significant number of the travelling public. Another aspect is the audible announcements at bus stations. Often they're not, and it's not necessarily a matter of cranking up the volume. It's the actual clarity of the announcement that's important, particularly for people with visual impairment, but not just for those people, or other mortals as well. And one final question: how do you actually measure 400 metres from a bus stop? Is that as the crow flies, or is that along the road? Does it take into account obstructions that might be in the way, such as dual carriageways, or coming from a rather mountainous part of the region? The gradient, because when planning applications go in, the sustainability of the site is one of the issues that we look at. But what can be defined as sustainable, because if it's within 400 metres, takes no account of a gradient like that, which makes it not really sustainable.
So I'll take your first point there, Councillor. Thank you for that. I think on the point that you mentioned at the bottom of page 15, it's the slash actually means both. It's not meaning an and or. So we had a real commitment as we came out of COVID and the restrictions that we had in there, and how our roadside displays changed during COVID, to drive roadside displays back to full capacity to pre-COVID levels, and that included paper copies at bus stops and shelters for those hard to reach communities and people who are less able to use digital technology. So that is still our commitment to do that. So I think just to reassure you on that point, Councillor, thank you.
Picking up on your second point, which is around the audible announcements at bus stations, it's fair to say we're doing a lot of work in this area. I think with the new bus station in Halifax and with Huddersfield and Dewsbury coming along as well, it's something we're really tuned into. It's not just the announcements at bus stations. It's that wider communication with passengers and the means by which we do that that's really key. And we are looking at various means of bringing in, like the Heaven Lead station with the sign language signs, various measures like that, and we're looking at what is practical to introduce at various locations. So I think that for us that's really important, and it even goes as far as when we're in our travel centres and bus stations. I know we have some challenges in Leeds bus station at the moment about how the new intercoms there work. We're looking to find solutions to that to get better communication with the passengers face to face there as well for audibility purposes. So it's constant review, and I think if people start flagging any issues they have with us, then we are able to sort of draw his attention and start looking at them. In terms of the 400 metres from the bus stop measure, I think that's a good point you brought up, and as a transport planner, I recognise distances of 400 metres, 800 metres and 1500 metres as the kind of distances we use in planning terms. It's recognised that it's an imperfect measure of how you have access to a bus stop, but I suspect that when the people who came up with the measures about what access to the bus stop should be, they couldn't take into account topography, but they would have taken into account 400 metres it's probably really actually 600 metres. And that's a reasonable distance for people to be from the core route network. It would clearly be impractical to generate, well, it could be done obviously, but to generate a number for every single bus stop as to what a 400 metre walk would be. It's the best proxy measure basically that's used industry-wide.
but it's not as the crow flies. We were thinking
No, it
could
is
be
a,
like,
it
you
is a
know,
crow fly measure. Sorry, I should have used that
it
right
could
at
be
the start.
somebody at the top of a cliff where
Yeah.
you have to go
Yeah.
3 miles round.
There is that issue that comes into it. So there's some. I think when we're designing these things, we probably need to, when we're looking at the data and analysing the data, a little bit of intelligence around it is always required.
I don't, as I say, it is a measure that is used in deciding planning applications, and I don't know whether there's anything that can be done at a regional level to reduce the sort of, to give some nuance to that rather than it being a clear yes or no answer.
Just repeat Councillor Cardell before we...
Thank you. I think there is a slightly different, because we use that target for the bus service improvement plan of how many people are within 400 metres of a bus stop, which, yeah, it is an imperfect measure, but I don't think we've found any more perfect. In terms of when it's being used for a planning application, I think there is more detail that's done, but that does come down to the separate districts planning policies around there. So I know certainly in Leeds, it is looked at to see whether it is walking distance to a bus stop, and that comes into the planning policy, because I remember seeing it on sites in ours where there is, half of the site will be a kilometre away if it's a big enough site, and that is then looked at. But I think that's more down to the separate districts planning policies that are in there, and how they're taken in.
Do you want to come back and hear any of that from Councillor Hutchinson?
My only observation on that, I think there's some valid points in there, and I think when we are looking at maybe there may be some key core corridors that we might have to look closely at and work out if there is really inclement topography, we might want to sort of look at whether we sort of monitor that a bit better.
Thank you. So any more questions on this item? I'm not seeing any at the moment. So I think the only thing I'd probably like to come back into the passenger charter stuff, that obviously it's a year on, isn't it? You're collating the information at the moment. Our next meeting, I believe, is May, isn't it? End of May. So is it possible to have a report on that agenda about the passenger charter?
Absolutely, we'll commit to that, Councillor. Yes, we'll have that for you. Yeah.
I think it's important with these things to have a continuation as we go through the years of the data we collect, yeah. But there may be other data that we'd like to collect on top of that, I think is what I'm hearing from the committee. So let's consider that going forward. Okay with that, Councillor Cardell? Lovely. Okay, with that then, I'm not hearing anybody disagree with the BSIP recommendations which are in this paper. So can I propose those then as what we should accept? Can I see all those in favour, please show? That is carried. Thank you very much. So then, moving on to the next paper, which is Transport Policy Update. Quite a lot to unpack in here. Who's doing this? Helen, lovely, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So as you say, Councillor Hinchcliffe, there's a number of items in here we've collected up just to summarise and to really just for the committee just to note their updated positions. First of all, strategic transport plan for Transport for the North. This is just to really flag to you that Transport for the North will now be adopting their hoping to adopt their strategic transport plan at their meeting next week with Partnership Board. We have fed back over the last year or so into their consultations around this. They then paused their route to adoption at the end of last year due to Network North being published, and just reflected that back into the report. So now they're in the position to now propose a final report for adoption. So that's the first one. Secondly, there's just a couple of areas here for Rail North that we just wanted to flag. And first of all, what we're just summarising here is the current kind of a position, if you like, with where we are with Rail North in terms of the operational side. And firstly, flagging really that performance continues to be impacted by a number of staffing areas, particularly staff shortages and kind of strikes, etc. So there's a number of things there that are impacting service delivery. Also to note around a few landslides across the area that are also impacting across service delivery, over and above what we can see on there around Baildon, and then most recently over the last week Nottingley as well. So we're also just showing in here that with TransPennine Express, and obviously we had conversations with the operators at the last meeting, but there is evidence that the temporary reduced timetable introduced in December is having a positive impact, albeit obviously there's a reduced service being offered there across the network. Also to note that the next national kind of rail timetable change will be on the 2nd of June, and we're expecting the changes there in this region to be minor, albeit there will be a few changes. Just kind of carrying on through really, we're also seeing that Transpennine route upgrade is continuing to have kind of scheduled disruption, if you like, across the network. Obviously that is delivering, but there is disruption as a result of that. Next section really around kind of rail infrastructure, and kind of again this is just really pointing to the TIU works around the upgrades, and particularly focusing on the Leeds to Huddersfield section. So it's just flagging really kind of the works that are happening, but also kind of the impact on the passenger around the disruption in the area. We then just wanted to give a quick update on a couple of the Network North projects. So moving down the report onto page 22. We're just saying in here really that obviously Network North was announced, and then from that kind of government have announced a number of sort of high-level projects and areas where that funding will be spent across the piece. So we just really wanted to flag in here that there's things kind of happening in the background around governance and kind of delivery of some of those, and we're working through with DFT and Network Rail on kind of what that structure looks like, particularly around the mine study, so the Midlands, Yorkshire and North East study, and this is kind of working with DFT and Network Rail, kind of continue through that process, continuing to make the case for a T-shaped station in Leeds. Work has also started at looking at options for the new Bradford station on the Bradford Southern Gateway, and again governance has been established to make sure that is all joined up across a number of areas in transport, but also master planning and development. And then also through Network North, kind of funds are starting to be committed through that process, particularly around over the time kind of commitments around kind of further BSIT funding, which we've already spoken about, and the next round of CRSTS, and a number of other areas such as maintenance as well. So kind of things are coming out through there, and we're trying to kind of keep on top of and work through what that impact on us is. And then moving on in the report around the major road network, and we reported to Transport Committee last year that Network North again kind of made an announcement to kind of include 460 million to do more on the major road network. We're still waiting for guidance from DFT around this, but we're still waiting and expecting kind of a pipeline to be developed on this, and TfN so Transport for the North are in conversations with us and DFT around timings for that, but also kind of expectations that we will include a list of schemes in there. We're just waiting for a bit more structure on what that might look like. And that's it. Thank you.
Lovely. So there's quite a few things in there. I think from my point of view, the things that I picked up was that the sickness levels, Northern in particular, and we've raised this before. You know, what kind of feedback are we getting from them about what they're doing about that, and is it working? And then secondly, of course, the landslip, the full closure of the Shipley-Geyser line, which is providing residents in Bradford district and, of course, I'm sure in Leeds district, a lot of issues at the moment. Temporary arrangements I know are in place, but I could do with understanding really how that's working and whether we need to push for improvements in those services. I know at Baildon, for example, that they can't have rail replacement buses on there because they're using the car park to do the work. So it's all a bit fluid at the moment, and I do think we need to take that very seriously. I wasn't aware of the Nottingley example actually. Wakefield colleagues probably are. I don't know if that's a landslip as well, is it? Because that's this is climate change. This is land slipping onto railways and affecting our day-to-day lives. So if you want to give us an update on Nottingley.
Information I picked up from Nottingham, and other people may know more than me, that the trains in Leeds and Nottingham cancelled for next week following track safety inspection. So disruptions expected to continue to the 19th of March. So it affects stops, including cancelled trains with Wakefield, Pontefract, Featherstone and Streethouse. I'm not sure if it's a landslip or whether it's a track issue, but we can find out. I have regular meetings with Northern. I'm picking up the points raised around Baildon as well with Northern early next week.
Okay, so questions, comments? Councillor Hutchinson, Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased to hear that the Combined Authority has been pressing the case for the electrification of the Calder Valley line to be included in Network North, and I wish you every success in that. It's also welcome news that there are additional stops at stations along Calder Valley line proposed in the new timetable from 2nd of June. I was wondering whether you had any details of that, or as to what those might be, or when we might expect those details. The third thing was, as I'm sure you're aware, the Halifax Station Gateway project has been pipelined or paused. It does seem to offer an opportunity for the plans of that to be reviewed, and hopefully some of the issues that were less than satisfactory in the original proposals to be reopened and looked at again, like the siting of the ticket office somewhere that would be much better for people actually coming into the station. And I just wondered whether there was any opportunity for doing that while we're waiting for funding to become available in the fullness of time.
So do you want to take those questions before we move on to Councillor Williamson?
I'll take the issue away around Halifax Station. I don't think it is something that we have had on the senior register with Network Rail, but we can certainly pick that up. Thank you for the support on Calder Valley. We're bringing forward the final rail strategy document to the Combined Authority tomorrow, and it is very, very timely, as the report sets out here. There is an awful lot of work taking place in the background at the moment to pick up from Network North and fully establish what a Northern Rail programme looks like in that regard. I think the relationship between the commitment that's been made around Bradford Station and the potential to use that as a catalyst for Calder Valley is something which is gaining traction really quite quickly now.
Yeah, the benefits to Calderdale are clear with that proposal, so
yeah,
that's good. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. First, thanks for the commitment to go away and find more about what's happening on the Nottingley line. But on paragraph 2.9 of the update, mentions the Leeds to Doncaster line using 3 carriages instead of 4. And I suppose the question for me is why they're sticking with 3 carriages, because it is quite a busy line. There's times where people are crammed on like sardines. There's been questions of people whether they can, during peak times specifically, whether everybody at the stop station can get on the train or not. And it sort of feeds into other issues we've been having with other operators about sort of the size of trains we get in at like busy periods, and then we get in like more carriages during quieter periods and things like that. So we're just wondering if maybe we could get any information on capacity percentages from Northern for that line specifically, please.
Hi, yeah, that's really good points that you've raised there. Before they brought in these measures about changing the lengths of trains on some of these lines, we did express our concern as Combined Authority that the issues that this could lead to. We were given assurances from Northern that in some cases where they were reducing the length of the train, they were on trains that they said were not subject to overcrowding, and we said we'd want to see some evidence to support that. Similar things happened on the Ilkley to Bradford line, I think, where they'd reduced, before the landslip, reduced from 4 to 3 carriages, and there's some overspill on that now into the Guiseley or the Ilkley to Leeds trains, and some peak services are being reduced in length. So it is something we are picking up with Northern now, and you're absolutely right, we're going to get some performance information and loading information to support that and push back strongly.
So when we've had this conversation with TPE, when obviously they took the Nova 3s off, we've had some data back from TPE to show what periods of day, what days of the week there's overcrowding. We need the same thing from Northern, really, for the whole of West Yorkshire, just to see where the stresses are. And I think just going back to the Baildon-Ilkley thing, if we can have something from Northern in terms of passenger feedback as well, what they're getting about the workarounds that are in place at the moment, what needs improving, because then obviously we'll push us as councillors to try and get anything improved to help those people who can't get around at the moment. So I'd be very interested to know what Northern are saying about passenger experience at the moment and getting through. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I would very much endorse that. This has had an impact on my residents in Guiseley, in Menston as well, and I think we really need that information from Northern. So we need that information about the passenger experience in terms of replacement bus services. But I wanted to come back to something you said, Dave, about what Northern had said around services not subject to overcrowding. I would very much agree with Jacob's point, and I think what you were saying about the Doncaster services, which affect some parts of Leeds as well, it's equally true for the Guiseley line. I know it's true for trains coming from New Pudsey and coming from the southwest into Leeds. I think there is a real problem here in terms of there not being enough carriages very often, in terms of overcrowding, and I simply don't think it's good enough for Northern to come up with this response, because that's not the experience of the travelling public, it's not my experience, it's not the experience of my residents and people travelling from across Leeds and West Yorkshire. So I think we really need clarity from Northern urgently on that, and I don't think their responses have been good enough to date. And another part of that as well, the report talks elsewhere about the sickness element, and I think we really need to know more about that. I've asked previously about trade union relations, the relationship with the trade unions, and I do think it's connected. The kind of relationship that the employer and the employees have is connected to sickness levels, and I think we need to have more clarity from them around that. I think we need to know what they're doing around sickness. We need to know what conversations there are with the employee representatives, with the trade unions, because this is having an effect on staff, it's having an effect on passengers, whether it's services which are cancelled or even if it's services which are delayed because existing staffing levels are overstretched. So there are quite a number of questions that we need much more information from Northern on. Thank you.
So, good summary there, really. Is there anything else you want to add, Dave?
Nothing else to add. I would say I'll be picking up the meeting with Northern and all these key points have been raised here.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to bring up once again and say thank you for including the Penistone line in the document. That it will be, the Combined Authority will continue to make the case for additional funding to enable an uplift in frequency. I'm glad to see that the Combined Authority will not stop going on about the Penistone line, because I know that us in Kirklees we're not going to stop either. And just building on the point that Councillor Edwards just made about sickness, it really is an important issue, and we saw last year that what made the difference with TransPennine Express's reliability was the return of rest day working, i.e. overtime, and it would be very useful to have an update on what the train companies are doing to reduce their reliance on overtime, because that is obviously going to be having an impact on the well-being of their staff.
Yes.
So
the answer is.
I'm conscious that we are due the rail operators coming back into a meeting of the committee. I think what we will do is there are a series of very useful questions here, and we have time in advance of the next meeting to give them due notice that there are a series of points that you would like to see set out very clearly in the meeting. So we'll make sure they are lined up to properly answer those questions.
So I know from Rail North Committee, these questions have been asked regarding sickness, and they have got a new sickness strategy in place of Northern, but I'm not sure we've seen the impact of it yet, have we? So it's certainly not from what people are saying around the table. Any more comment? Oh, Councillor Kilbane, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. Just to echo what you were saying about climate change, we've recently been dealing with flooding on the York Harrogate Leeds line. As climate change is here now, and we're dealing with it now, and Network Rail are having to put plans in place to keep that line open. So it's a very, very real challenge. As electrification's been mentioned, it would be remiss of me not to say, whenever I get the opportunity, when we're electrifying Leeds to Hull, can we make sure the Sherburn and Elmet loop isn't missed out? Because then we can electrify Hull to York at the same time. Welcome the signs of improvement that we're seeing from TransPennine. We were told that some services would be reinstated if things were going well, so it would be good to push to see what those services are. In particular, we're concerned about lack of capacity York to Scarborough in the summer holiday weeks. I know there's talk of it introducing more services on the weekend. Well, the kids are also on holiday during the week, during the summer, so we'd be interested to see if there's anything happening there. And also in terms of the miners work, it would be interesting to know what engagement we've had with the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority on that, because obviously they'll be a key player in that work too. Thanks.
I'm a bit obsessed with this now, I'm afraid. So I asked Network Rail about this climate change stuff the other day on railways, and in the last 12 months there's been 31 landslips across the north of England, and 10 of these located in West Yorkshire. So it is absolutely impacting on everybody's day-to-day life, and it says that's inundation of the railway, like you were saying there on the line you were specifying there. Gardens and patios going onto railway lines, extreme rainfall resulting in high groundwater levels, so coming up as well. So it's very serious really for our transport. Councillor Firth.
Just on that very point, I think I mentioned it to you earlier in the week that it is climate change without a doubt. Some of our infrastructure, our rail infrastructure, has been about 150, 175 years. Never had anything like this. So undoubtedly, it's just the volume of water comes down, the saturation, and that is obviously causing this. On another point, can I raise a very point 215, I think it is, about we all want improved services, and most of them come to Leeds. And unless we resolve the situation about the new T station, we're in bother. I'll put it just like that. Simon, can you explain where that's going? I know it says in the report it's at the DFT, but the land, if it is released this summer, we're up the creek.
Yeah, so there's a couple of points there that relate to the Midland, Yorkshire and North East study. So this is the final iteration of the study that was long promised to the Transport Select Committee, announced in July, then paused while Network North was published, and is now finally starting. From a North Yorkshire perspective, I will check, because there's a study board that's just been formed, which I'm joining, but I am anticipating that there will be a North Yorkshire representative there. We've been very clear with government. The mayor and the leader of Leeds City Council wrote publicly to the Prime Minister last week, and that letter was carried in the Yorkshire Post as well. And we have followed up with official correspondence from the Chief Executive of this organisation and the City Council at official level, to make it very clear that we do not see that the evidence has been put forward to suggest that the risks of removing the land holdings have been addressed, and that therefore, as an absolute minimum, the land needs to be retained as safeguarded whilst that study completes its work, and it should be the findings of that study that then inform what safeguarded land is required going forward. We are very clear that we cannot see a scenario where a long-term growth model for Leeds Station and we're talking about a station that needs to be able to satisfy growth right through the remainder of this century. We cannot see that a long-term growth scenario can be satisfied without building a southern-facing extension, a T-shaped element to Leeds Station. I think we recognise that that is not necessarily going to be of a high-speed nature anymore, but nonetheless, southern-facing platforms are still needed if we are going to be able to accommodate both a step change in east-west movements through the Leeds hub and also movements from the south, all of which at the moment have to squeeze themselves into the western approach to Leeds Station. My understanding is that decisions could happen very quickly now. In government, we're not directly cited on those, and that's the reason why we're maintaining this campaign of correspondence to highlight just how critical it is. Once that land goes and is developed, there will be no other way of us being able to facilitate a surface additional rail link through from the south to Leeds Station.
I mean, it's crucial for the whole region, isn't it, really? Sorry, Councillor Wright. Obviously, there's no point in having new stations in West Yorkshire if we haven't got Leeds Station sorted out, so there's nowhere to go. So it is vital that that is organised.
I just stress that what you just mentioned, that the impact on all of us, on all districts in West Yorkshire will be hugely great, and the impact of not having this T station on our economies in West Yorkshire going forward for generations will be dire. So I think they've got the full support to you, Chair, of this committee, making those directions to DFT.
Absolutely, lovely. So any more on this item before Councillor Edwards brief?
Thank you. Yeah, can I just absolutely emphasise the importance of this? I know that you're working hard on this. I think it's really important after the government let down the north of England with their announcement on HS2. Can I also say there's a responsibility for all of us on this committee, and I'm looking particularly at the Conservative end. I see we only have one representative today, and I don't want to pick on my Wharfdale neighbour too much, but you have a responsibility as well to make this message, to bring this message home to your ministerial colleagues and to others, because I think very often we hear silence from this end, and it's absolutely critical that this land is not lost, because when it's lost, we won't get it back, and so there is some responsibility here. So can I urge the Conservative group, only one of whom is here today, to make sure that they push these points with their MPs, with their ministers, whenever the election happens, hopefully sooner rather than later, but decisions could be taken very soon, and so this does need to be this does need to be safeguarded after the destruction we've seen already.
Thank you. I mean, Councillor Lloyd, thank you very much for attending today. Obviously, as Conservative representative, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you did want to say anything, you're very welcome to do so, but absolutely understand you're here representing Conservatives today. Is there anything else anybody wants to say? No? Okay, well, so there's quite a lot there to unpack. Yes. Obviously, there's a huge range of issues, and I think you've heard loud and clear that the Leeds T-shaped station is something all of us in West Yorkshire need to see progressed at pace, because it inhibits all our progress on all our individual schemes as well. And then obviously there's some local issues there for in terms of flooding, etc., that we need to sort out. So I'm going to, if that's okay, those are for noting. We'll have the rail operators here next time then, do we think?
I'm not sure it's next time or the time after. It's usually every 6 months. I'll check back on the date.
Okay, fine. And obviously we'll look forward to catching up with them then. So moving on to project approvals then. There's 2 project approvals on the list. Armley Gyratory, and I think there's a cycling one in there as well. Who's presenting on these? I know we've got officers coming up efficiently there. Do you want to introduce yourselves, who you are, where you come from? Thank you.
Hi, Casey McLean, Programme Manager within the Transport Partnerships team at the CA.
Hi, Vicky Dumbrell, Programme Manager on TCF, so I've got the leads item. Sorry, I'm not doing, he's not with us today. Cheers.
It's fine, as long as you know about roads and railways, you're very welcome at this table. So, first of all, Casey.
Thank you. I'm here seeking a decision on the Armley Gyratory scheme, which is funded through West Yorkshire Plus Transport Fund. The scheme itself is delivered in 2 phases. Phase 1, which would improve the efficiency of the highway, is now complete. Phase 2 will deliver the active travel elements of the scheme and is now seeking full business case approval. Phase 2 is further broken down into Phase 2A and 2B. Phase 2A is the replacement of the existing footbridges over the A643, Gildard Road and Spence Lane, with new foot cycle bridges, and is expected to be completed in July 24. Phase 2B is the replacement of the existing footbridge over the A58 with a new 3 metre wide footbridge, Wellington Road, and is expected to be complete in December 24. Engagement with key stakeholders goes as far back as 2008, with the first round of public consultation on options carried out in 2018. The further round of preliminary designs held in 2019, and since submission of the Phase 1 FBC in 21, the scheme has continued to consult and engage with key stakeholders to develop Phase 2, including the Disability and Wellbeing Network, the New Wortley Residents Association Group, and Active Travel England. The delivery of Phase 2 will improve the overall accessibility and safety for all users crossing the gyratory by foot or bike. The removal of the current stepped access to the bridge, inclusion of shallower ramp gradients and resting areas will ensure all users, including disabled users, pregnant women, pram users and older people, will benefit from the scheme's footbridge upgrades. The scheme will also encourage short trips to be made by foot or bike instead of the car. The benefit cost ratio for the full scheme is 3.571. This is categorised as high value for money. Total value cost for the scheme is 41,970,000, and the decision we're seeking is for approval for Phase 2 to proceed through decision point 4, full business case, and work commences on activity 5, delivery. The funding recommendation sought is 10,460,000. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this is a scheme that's obviously already been to here and it's already in train, isn't it? So this is an additional element of it. Any questions, comments on this? No, I think we're all familiar with this. Well, if there's no questions, I'm happy to recommend approval on that. Can I see all those in favour, please show? Thank you very much, that is carried. Next item on the agenda then is the other scheme.
Okay, thank you. So this is a fairly straightforward change request. It's for a scheme that's led by Leeds City Council. So it's the Leeds City Centre Cycle Connectivity Scheme, which is funded through Transforming Cities Fund. So it already has an approval from November 2022 for just over 7 million of TCF funding, and it's delivering new segregated cycle lanes and crossings, so joining up and extending the existing cycle network in the city. There's 4 packages in the scheme, and these are on track to complete by the end of March 2024, so that is in line with the original approval. So the reason for this change request is that Leeds have secured an additional £1 million of funding from National Highways, and that funding has been spent on the Dewsbury Road connector package of the scheme. So this essentially has freed up £1 million of TCF funding. So the proposal is to use that freed up £1 million to further extend the Dewsbury Road connector scheme in order to deliver more benefits for the scheme. So today then, the decision that we're bringing today is to approve the extension of the delivery time frame from March 2024 to March 2025 to allow that additional work to be done, and to approve the reprofiling of the £1 million TCF funding to enable the delivery of the additional scope at the Dewsbury Road.
Thank you very much. I wish Jeremy Hunt could see us actually, because obviously we're very efficient, aren't we? Making money go a very, very long way. So just for £1 million going to extend this scheme just by extending it a year. So I know government are very keen for us to be efficient all the time. We are incredibly efficient to local government, and I think this just demonstrates how efficient we are. So is there any questions, comments on this? Sounds eminently sensible to me, so I'm happy to recommend it. Can I see all those in favour, please show? Thank you very much, that is carried. Lovely. And I believe that brings us to the end of this section of the meeting. Of course, colleagues, if you can stay behind, not because you've been naughty, but because we've got a workshop on 2 other elements of transport in preparation for future meetings, that'd be great. Otherwise, thank you very much for your attendance, everybody, today, and have a great weekend when it gets here. Thank you.